Okay, stream. It's like we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Name is Dave right here. I'm Trinitarian, and I have a lot of stuff to talk about. So I got a lot of stuff in my chest, just something to put out there. So I'm pretty sure people can really relate to this, and it has something to do with the Messiah, if you know what I mean. Uh, First of all, I know it's a lot of platforms out there, a lot of people doing their own thing. We, on the other hand, unfortunately, we don't have enough. We don't have enough apologists, defending the faith. We don't have enough people going out there and going to the streams and trying to defend the faith. But we do have a lot of people, bad mouthing the Messiah and Christianity and the Bible. It's a whole bunch of them out there. You know, we, on the other hand, we may not be pastors, we may not be priests, but we still have duty to, be part of that and do what we can. We have to try to defend the faith however best we can. Let me make sure my multi-guest option here is on. So if you give me a second, in case anybody wants to join, and we can talk about things. So excuse me for a second. You're right here. Our request from. Okay. So we good. Little history. I know the New Testament somehow painted the Sanhedrin as the bad guys. But they were the good guys, especially in those days. The Sanhedrin is what you would call uh, a council. A council that consists of Jews who upheld the law and who applied the law. They have the Bible use words like the elders and the Pharisees, or the Pharisees and the Sadducees and your elders. You know, Also another group would be the Essenes. The ones who gave us Dead Sea Scroll. Somebody trying to join. Where it is? Yeah, how you guys doing? So we're just gonna talk about a little history about who this Sanhedrin is and where does Jesus Christ, fall in, and why they were always clashing. You know, the scribes are people who copy the law. They were the one who knew the Torah back and front. They were the one who upheld the law. They taught the law to the people, and they were the ones who, if anything, if anybody have any question, they were the ones who actually were there to make sure the Jews, understood everything about the law. But they took it to an extreme later on down the line, just to tell you how devil works. So the scribes, like we have in the book of Luke chapter 15, it gives an example of a scribe, where Jesus Christ was talking to the Sanhedrin. Again, when I say Sanhedrin, I'm referring to the scribes, the Pharisees, and the Sadducees. So y'all know who I'm actually talking about. This was parable of the lost sheep in Luke chapter 15, when Jesus Christ somewhat riled them up by calling them shepherds. For a Jew, you got to understand that being a Jew it's not just a religion. It was a way of life. You know, we had Jews who like the Pharisees. They called excluded ones. The Pharisees, it comes from the word perushim, which means to separate. The separated ones. These are people who separated themselves from the other Jews to study the law, study the Torah. They did mingle with people, which is why another reason why they were upset with Jesus. They saw Jesus; he was sitting with people and eating with people without washing hands, and this self-righteous act, that Jesus so bitterly condemned, So, and we also have the Essenes. They were the ones who gave us our Dead Sea Scrolls. So you have all these groups. You have the Pharisees, you have the Sadducees, you have the elders, and you also have Jews who are not observant. The wayward Jews, if you will. So just to give you an idea of the kind of people Jesus Christ was dealing with. So way back in the day, these are the good guys. These are the good guys, and you have Jews who don't practice, who don't observe the law. They will be the bad ones. Like you heard of the good Samaritans. The Samaritans would have been the bad guys because they're not following the Torah. Why the good guys would be this Sanhedrin, this council of elders and Pharisees and Sadducees, people who upheld the law. They're the ones that actually knew the law back in front. They're the ones that they were educated, highly educated with high IQ. They're the ones who taught the law. So in a way, they have to reflect their lifestyle, around the law. People don't teach the law and behave differently. They also had to show, how they live, to be able to be recognized by the people. How you doing, Eddie, Paulette, David Brannon? How you guys doing, John? So this is just to give you an idea of the kind of people, Jesus Christ was dealing with. Unfortunately, for these scribes, again, that is why they tell you, a Jew will tell you they refuse Jesus Christ as the Messiah. Why? Because they're putting on the lenses of these Jews, these rabbinic Jews, these Pharisees and Sadducees. After the destruction of the temple, the second temple, you got to understand that the Jews, they were lost. It is thanks to these Pharisees that Judaism became more book focused. It went from a temple centered, because imagine without the temple and with the temple being destroyed, you can atone for sin again. You can do all the sacrifices. All those things are obsolete now because of the temple. That's why I say Judaism it wasn't just a religion. Everything was focused, centered on on that temple. The temple is where they all come to gather. They bring their gift offerings, sin offerings. The priest, will do his priestly duties and bless the people. So but after the destruction of the temple, they were lost, the Jews. So it was the Pharisees who started this book centered, idea, because now without the temple, you could no longer do sacrifices. Now you have to understand why the sacrifices are being made. So understand the law governing the sacrifices, which is why the synagogues, was started. The synagogue's house of study. Somebody trying to join? Let's see who this is. Hello, how you doing?
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for joining my live.
I'm fine.
Where you guys from? Yeah, sorry, I'm. Do you speak English? Do you speak English?
No.
You don't speak.
No.
Where you guys from?
No. Urdu.
Urdu. Okay. Thanks for joining my live, man. I have to let you guys go now. I'm in the middle of something. Okay. Thanks for joining in. I don't speak Urdu either.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Let's see right here.
Thank you. बात की मेहरबानी की मैं वैसे को मनाते
Urdu. There you go. Sorry about that, guys. I think they just popped up out of nowhere. So, okay, as I was saying, so this is just to give an idea. But again, when Judaism became book focused, now is understanding the law governing the surrounding the practices, the temple worship. You know, that's what the synagogues was basically, house of study. You know, but these Pharisees and the scribes, this is the era of the rabbis now. This became the era of the rabbis. So these rabbis ultimately became the law, and came out with their own book called the Talmud for the Jews. So if you notice, even Jesus in the New Testament, the book of Matthew, I think this is Matthew 23 or 24, the chapter of the seven woes, where Jesus Christ bitterly condemned this rabbinic tradition. Woe unto the scribes, woe unto the Pharisees who do this, woe unto these guys who say one thing but act differently. You know, there are laws that, because basically what the Talmud is the Talmud is a book of more laws that came out of the Torah. The Torah itself is the book of the law given to Moses. The rabbis came up with a different book called the Talmud. It's a book that gave narrations of more laws and discussions between other rabbis, you know. So you could have different law for a particular law, you know, but the Jewish encyclopedia is what tell you which of those laws was chosen, you know. Like, for example, the Sabbath, where Jesus Christ was condemning them and telling them Sabbath was made for the man, you know, not man for the Sabbath. You got to understand why this is important, because saying these rabbis became the law, Jesus Christ said they sat on Moses' seat. The rabbis, they became bigger than Moses, they became bigger than the Torah, and ultimately became the law. These rabbis. You know, in the Jewish tradition, when it comes down to Sabbath and you not being able to work, they had to come up with laws to define what work is. Whatever you have to do that day, you can't even go fix you something to eat. That would be considered work. You can't go to the well and fetch water. That would be considered work. You can't work 2 miles away from your home. That would be considered work. Someone who's a tailor, you can't have your instruments, they all have to be put away. You can't have them on the table, because that'll be assuming you're trying to work the next day. So they had to define what work is, you know. So ultimately they became the law. And this is another tradition that Jesus so bitterly refused. You know, he was it was a tradition that was driving the people away from God, basically. You guys are giving these rabbis this kind of platforms. And, ultimately they are now bigger than Moses and bigger than the temple priests. Even in their tradition, there was a time where the high priest was confronted by these rabbis, and the people left. They followed the rabbis and left the high priest in the temple. That's to tell you how big of an influence, they got. So the Talmud is how do I put it? The amount of attempt these rabbis try to diminish and devalue his name. Even the Talmud attacks Mary herself. Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ. That's just giving you an idea of what the Talmud is. They in the Talmud now, for someone who is very passionate about Christ and you are easily offended, I would suggest that is not a book for you to read. But yet again, if you want to figure out or know why the Jews, rejected Jesus as the Messiah, just so you know. So in those times, remember, these Pharisees, Sadducees, the elders, and the scribes, they were the good guys. So Jesus Christ was someone considered a rogue Jew. The fact that the Sadducees and the scribes are the ones that applied the law, they're the ones who uphold the law and taught the law, even requirements for what a temple priest have to do, things to eat, things that are lawful and things that are unlawful. They're the ones who became, the law, basically. And Jesus Christ, his application on the law was different from theirs, which is why they always, they were always clashing. The way Jesus Christ applied the law was always different from the way they applied the law. So that was another reason why they always clashed. There are things in the Talmud that are very perplexing and disturbing. Again, like I said, it is a book that represented the oral law for the Jews. For example, in the Talmud, it says, it gives a record of how the Pharisees and the scribes can get someone unalive as long as they don't do it directly, which is exactly the same way they somehow swayed Pilate, to unalive Jesus and not doing it directly. That's in the Talmud. There is no punishment for having somebody unalive as long as you don't unalive the person directly. If like in Sanhedrin 77a, now the Talmud has a way of the book go A on one side, then B on the other side. So 77 will be the page, then you have A on the left side, then you have B, then the commentaries after. So Sanhedrin 77a states that if one bound his neighbor and he died of starvation, he is not liable to execution because it wasn't direct or intentional. So just the way they manipulated the Romans and Pilate to unalive Jesus, but they're not, being part of it directly. For one, Pilate wasn't that much of a pushover. He was at this time the Jews were under the Romans at this time. So but you can see how the blame was shifted to the Romans instead of the Jews, taking accountability for what they did. There is another law, like in Sanhedrin 52b, it states that the penalty for adultery doesn't include sex with a minor, the wife of a minor or the wife of a heathen. You know, so I don't know how they got these, you know, out of the Torah. Like I said, the whole Torah, like the Ten Commandments, Jesus Christ summarized it only to two laws. The Sanhedrin, this Sanhedrin, like the Ten Commandments, they were able to, they came out with over 600 laws from the Ten Commandments alone. Jesus Christ only summarized those 10 commandments into two. Love that God, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your soul, and your strength. And love your neighbor as yourself. That is the summary Jesus gave of these laws. But the Sanhedrin, they came out with over 600 Jewish laws. Over 600 laws in the Talmud. You know, this is just to give you an idea of the Jews, you know, these Jews and why they reject Jesus as the Messiah. So there are laws. There are laws in this Talmud that are beneficial to these scribes, beneficial to them. So they have negative laws, they have positive laws. But Jesus Christ was able to summarize the Ten Commandments into two laws. The Talmud gives legal endorsement to marry and seduce 3-year-old baby girls, 3 years and 1 day old. It says that these priests they are privileged to marry, you know, 3-year and 1 day old baby girls. I don't know how that came out of the Torah, but most of these rabbis, they had this privilege. Even their most respected rabbi, Shimeon ben Yohai, this guy also upheld this privilege, but for Jews, that's their big man. This to tell you how these rabbis ultimately became higher than Moses and Aaron and the Torah. They became the law. So this is just to give you an idea of the kind of people Jesus Christ was dealing with at the time, you know, which is very unfortunate. Now we have accounts of the New Testament and how how early it was, basically. So the New Testament, we have the book of Mark. Mark is one of the earliest copies of the gospel, written about 30, 40 years after the crucifixion. Now you got to understand this calendar we are using right now, the Gregory calendar. We started off using the Julian calendar with Julius Caesar. So ultimately that changed. I have somebody else trying to join. Who is this? Hassan. How you guys doing? How you doing, Wakas? Thank you. As I was saying, the earliest account for the gospel was Mark, written about 70 AD. Now, AD is what we know as CE, Common Era or Current Era. AD, after death. When it was changed, there was no year zero. So basically, when Jesus Christ was born, when Jesus Christ would have been 4 years old, that would have been 5 AD. Basically, there was no year zero. It is changing from BC, before Christ, or BCE, before Common Era, then AD, after death, or CE, which would be Common Era. the calendar we're using right now. So there was no year zero. So counting that time, Mark would have been the earliest source we have, then Matthew, then Luke, and John. So the Talmud came after the gospel. And this would be about 200 to 500 years after Jesus Christ. This was the time of the rabbis now. They've taken over now and teaching the law. So which is why the Talmud is false, because the narration given there by Jesus about Jesus and Mary, and also Christians who happened to be the first Jews, because the first Jews were Christians. I mean, the first Christians were Jews. These Jews who happened to become rogue in the eyes of these rabbis, and the punishment and given in the Talmud, which is why we say is actually unfortunate the way they did it. We know it's false because the narration given there doesn't correspond to our narration. The Talmud gives reference of Yeshua, which is Jesus, Yeshua ben David, and Yeshua ben Yosef, Jesus son of David and Jesus son of Joseph. And it gives account of another Jesus, ben Pantera, which happened to be a Roman soldier. So according to the Talmud, it says Mary had a husband, which was Joseph. But this Mary says she was a hairdresser, but also had affairs with a Roman soldier called Ben Pantera. The reference of Jesus in the Talmud, one came years before the account of Jesus' birth in the New Testament that we have. Then the other came way too late. So the two accounts of Jesus we have in the Talmud, one is coming too early and one is coming too late. This is just to give you an idea of how they try to tarnish the name Jesus himself. That name, it became a taboo because he was the one always going against this rabbinic tradition, which was very unfortunate. In the Talmud, treatment of non-Jews, which are Gentiles, it wasn't very pleasant. It wasn't very pleasant. Like we have account in the New Testament where Jesus Christ mentioned the Jew or a temple Jew will tell you, gave account of two people praying to God, and the temple Jew will say, I thank God I'm not like these other people. I thank God I'm a Jew. I thank God that I'm this, just self-righteousness that Jesus so bitterly, rebuked. And the other person who's a sinner, a tax collector, because that was the reference, the tax collector will say, yes, I'm a sinner. God, give me your grace. And Jesus Christ said, yes, at least the prayer of the tax collector will be heard because he is acknowledging his fault. He's acknowledging he's a sinner while he's praying. But this is to tell you the pride, give you an idea of the pride of these rabbis. In the Talmud also gave reference of that a rabbi is someone who will come out and pray like that. I thank God I am not among I'm not among these Gentiles. And in the Talmud, like it says, the best among the Gentiles deserve to be killed. The best among the Gentiles deserve to be killed. Now they will blame it on the oppression going on at the time because with the Jews scattered, and the destruction of the temple, most of them ended up in Babylon, and the Babylonian practices somewhat rubbed off against these Jews. Let's see right here. Somewhat rubbed off against these Jews, these practices, these Babylonian practices. Their big man, Rabbi Shimon ben Yohai, This is someone who the Talmud claim he did miracles too. When Jesus Christ did miracles, the Bible gave account of how they blamed him using the power of the devil to cast out these demons, and he was doing these miracles by the prince of the devils, Beelzebub. That was also in the Talmud. The Talmud is giving reference of these rabbis, like this guy right here, Rabbi Shimeon ben Yohai. Him and his son were stuck in a cave for like 12, 13 years. And all they did in there was read the Torah. And when they came out, they had laser eyes. Anywhere they looked upon, fire everywhere. They had that Superman eyes. Now you're going to believe in that, but you don't believe in the miracles Jesus Christ did. When they were in there, Elijah appeared to them and said, it's time for you guys to go out. The Romans are not looking for you guys no more. It's time for you guys to come out of that cave. They came out of the cave, but everywhere they set their eyes on, laser eyes, fire. They're setting everything ablaze. Then ultimately, God had to tell him, what are you doing? Go back in that cave. And he went back in with his son and stayed for another 1 year, then came out, and things ended up differently this time. His son was still laser eyes, setting everything ablaze. But him, on the other hand, now he has the power to repair. He was repairing the fires now. You guys want to believe in that in your tradition, but you don't want to believe in the miracles Jesus Christ did. This is just to give you an idea of the attempt that they use this attempt to diminish and devalue the name of Jesus. The Talmud gave narration of the miracle, the formula. If you remember, even in the New Testament, we have a narration of where the apostles were doing healing the sick and raising, they were doing these miracles, and somebody came to try to buy, they say, please sell me this power. I want this power for myself, and they rebuked him. In the Talmud, he gave account of a Jew who let his own nephew die because they didn't want that name, that formula, professed over the sick to make these miracles. This is the amount of hate. This is the amount of hate they had towards Jesus. But this is just to give you an idea of the kind of people that he was dealing with at the time. When they came out and said Jesus Christ was sitting with sinners and eating with sinners, and Jesus Christ told them, I'm here for the sick. This self-righteous acts you guys upholding. You got to understand these guys, they practice and live their life a certain kind of way that they don't mingle with people. There are laws you have to follow, things you have to eat, things you have to do, that is being portrayed through the kind of life you live. That is why they couldn't sit with sinners. They couldn't do certain things with people who are non-Jews. And when they saw Jesus Christ doing the exact opposite, that somewhat pissed them off. They were very angry about that, which is very unfortunate. So so the Talmud is no knowledge is wasted. You can like go through it or read about it and see what it is, but it doesn't favor the Christians. It doesn't favor it's a book that somewhat elevated, these Jews, these rabbis. Jesus Christ said they have sat on Moses' seat. That is an understatement, because if you read the Talmud, you will understand exactly where Jesus Christ is coming from. They sat on Moses' seat, became higher than the high priest Aaron himself, and ultimately became higher than the Torah, the law, and they became ultimately the law. That is who these rabbis were. There's another guy that did miracles in the Talmud called Chanina Bendoza. That's another guy that the Talmud said who did miracles. This guy was another miracle worker, which is why they don't see miracles of Jesus as something really, really new. Even we also have reference in the Old Testament of prophets doing miracles too. So for them, that was a normal thing. Someone who was really, who lived that life of piety, who was well respected. Someone has some sort of miracles, going on with them. This is in their Talmud. This guy, Chanina Bendoza, his daughter, somewhat during the worship of the temple, how they light up the candles and stuff. There was a reference where the daughter used vinegar instead of oil, and that vinegar, somewhat lit up and lasted the whole night. This somewhat just to play another, give you an idea of another miracle, of this Chanina Bendoza. You guys believe the miracles of these guys, but the miracles Jesus was doing, y'all want to label it as miracle from Satan. So it was a battle between Jesus and this Sanhedrin, the scribes. The Talmud says whoever lies or doesn't listen to or whoever mocks these sages is going to be punished. Christians are going to be punished because they are followers of Christ. Christ is going to be punished because he was a rogue Jew. And just the most anti-Gentile maltreatment in this Talmud, elevating these Jews, which is very unfortunate. So, yes, the Talmud is anti-Gentile by nature. And any Jew caught disclosing the information in this Talmud will be unalived. It's in the Talmud, it's a law. A Jew giving the information that is in this Talmud to a non-Jew or to a Gentile has to be unalived. This is to tell you the severity of the matter. And this is in Sanhedrin 59a. If a non-Jew takes a Jew to court, a Jewish court, they're going to rule in favor of the Jew instead of, hearing the person out. Just you being a Jew alone, automatically you are granted favor. This is just to give you an idea of the kind of tradition these Jews are, were upholding. The kind of tradition that Jesus Christ so bitterly rebuked, which is no wonder why they don't accept him as the Messiah. No wonder why they try to, tarnish his name in this book, this Talmud. Is very, very, very unfortunate and very disturbing. Now we have Jews who consider themselves Messianic Jews who are coming to the truth. They accept Jesus as the Messiah, but also practice with the old covenant, with the Torah, the covenant of Sinai. But they have come to terms that yes, Yeshua is actually the Messiah, but they also uphold the Torah and practice the Old Testament laws, like keeping the Sabbath and the kosher meals, things they eat and things they don't eat, things they wear, the haircuts and the celebrations. So they still uphold those old traditions, but they come into terms that yes, Jesus Christ, those are the Messianic Jews. You got to understand, I don't know how true their motive are, because if you really accept Jesus Christ, you will accept his law and the Torah he came with, because even the Torah say the Messiah will be coming with his law. So there are law in the Old Testament that are still binding on us as Christians, like the circumcision law. Paul said it's no longer a physical thing. Now we are circumcised in the heart, so for someone who's not a Jew, you accept Jesus and you get that spiritual circumcision. But if you are a Jew, it is something binding on you. You still have to get circumcised because, like I said, being a Jew is not just a religion; it's a way of life. They are a people. It's a ethnicity thing. They are a people. So the Old Testament gave accounts of when you guys don't have, when the Jews don't have leaders no more, they need to listen to their elders. That is the excuse they gave of listening to these rabbis, and ultimately making this rabbi, giving them this kind of platform and putting them on a pedestal to where they automatically became the law, So this is, again, like I said, is somewhat of a rough sketch narration, but giving you an idea of the kind of people that Jesus Christ was dealing with, And Jesus Christ called them hypocrites and sons of your father, the devil, and you can listen to them, but don't do what they do because they are hypocrites, basically. They are self-righteous. So if we go to Matthew chapter 23, I'm just going to read. That way we know where we see. Matthew chapter 23, the seven woes. So you're going to be quoting Jesus. So I want to make sure I get the right. Let's see right here. This will be in Matthew 23. I like the King James Bible. King James Bible usually capture it perfectly, capture the language perfectly, and which is some translations are a little bit doesn't usually capture the message completely. So let's do New King James version. Warning against the scribe and Pharisees. We're just going to give you an idea. So we've been talking about the scribes so far, but this is just to give you an idea. This is Matthew chapter 23, the 7 or the 8 woes. It said, Then Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works. So that's a warning right there. For they say and do not do. So they are all talk, but they don't really practice what they preach. For they bind heavy burdens, hard to bear, and they lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. So they are hypocrites. But all their works they do to be seen by men. They make their what's that word? Phylacteries. They make their phylacteries broad and enlarge the borders of the garment. They love the best places at feasts, the best seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called by men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But you Do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, the Christ, and you are all brethren. So you only have one teacher, that's Christ. That's it. These self-righteous rabbis, they are all talk. And this is Jesus Christ saying this. We're just going to read further. Do not call anyone on earth your father, for you have one Father who is in heaven. Do not be called teachers, for one is your teacher, the Christ. But he who is greatest among you shall be your servant, and whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. So you have to put yourself like a kid, basically. This is also when Jesus Christ put a kid in front of the disciples and said, unless you humble yourself like this child right here, you will never enter the kingdom of God. So you have to humble yourself to be exalted. But you got to understand, in the Talmud, the Jews, especially this council, these elders and scribes, they are very, very, very elevated in the Talmud. This self-righteousness. We're going to read on verse number 13, chapter 23. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourself, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. So he already told them, you guys are not going to enter heaven, but you are stopping the people willing to learn from going into heaven. Chapter 14, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. Therefore you will receive greater condemnation. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel land and sea to win one proselyte, and when he is won, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Woe unto you, blind guides. So Jesus Christ called them blind guides who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obliged to perform it. Fools and blinds, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever swears by the altar, it is nothing, but whoever swears by the gift that it is on it is obliged to perform it. Fools and blinds, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, he who swears by the altar swears by it and by all things on it. He who swears by the temple swears by it and him who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and him who sits on it. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you pay tithes of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercies and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. Blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and dish, but inside are full of extortion and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisees, first clean the inside of the cup and dish, that is the outside of them may be clean also. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tomb, which indeed appear beautiful outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones and are unclean. Even so, you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous, and say, if we had lived in the days of our father, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up in the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, brood of vipers, how can you escape the condemnation of hell? Therefore, indeed, I send you prophets wise men and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from city to city, that on you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zachariah, son of Berechiah, whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Assuredly, I say to you, all these things will come upon this generation. 37. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you are not willing. See, your house is left to you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more till you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Amen. Amen. So I'm sorry, guys, it's a little lengthy, but just to give you an idea of what was taking place. Michael Chrisley joined. So this is just to give you an idea of what was taking place. Again, in these times, you got to understand, these people they're the self-righteous, they were the good guys. They were the good guys. So, and Jesus Christ was considered somewhat of a rogue Jew. Why? Because his application of the law is always different from the way they applied it. So anyway, that's gonna do it for our live again today. I'm gonna go live again later on, and hopefully we get some people who want to come talk and give us the perspective. We'll try to bring up some more topics, especially about this Torah tradition, and give you guys an idea of what was going on and why Jesus Christ so bitterly rebuked this oral tradition of the Jews, and which is also why they were angry at him. You got to understand, especially with those who served in the temple. It is a tradition that if you're a Jew, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you have to at least go visit that place once in your lifetime. So you got to understand, when it came down to the temple worship, people are bringing in. Sorry, I cannot answer you right now. Imagine 250,000 Jews, and say one lamb is for 10 people. So you got to understand how many lambs, how many goats, pigeons, and food, being brought to the temple. Which is why even when Jesus Christ walked up to the temple and scattered everything and flipped the table, and called them, you turn the house of God, my father's house, into a den of thieves. The people listened and left. So that's another reason why they were angry with Jesus. There's money involved. These Pharisees, they were eating large. They were the ones, in charge of this law and these sacrifices and practices. They were the ones embezzling. So this is just to give you an idea of what was going on. So ultimately, they meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. So I can't really hate on the Jews because according to Jesus, he was hated first. We have to forgive. Hopefully they come to the truth. I know a lot of them are opening their eyes little at a time because the first Christians were Jews. Just like Paul. Paul himself was a Pharisee when he was still called Saul and persecuting Christians who were the rogue Jews at the time. He was a Pharisee. We have another account of like Nicodemus. He too was a scribe. Like in the Old Testament, we had Ezra and Jeremiah. These were all Pharisees and scribes. So just to give you an idea of a little history. Anyway, thank you so much for being here. I guess I will catch up with you guys again later on and bring another topic. Hopefully we get somebody who will come and try to discuss and dispute, then talk about things. But thank you so much. Peace out. Let's see, I will cut this off. now and stream over here.